family. Today we're still working on the insulated rabbit hutch, so we'll get straight back on with it. Hope you enjoy. This is basically just roofing felt, or there's multiple names for it. I'm calling it roofing felt. It's pretty straightforward. It's just a waterproof cover to put over your stuff, and it is quite simple to use. I will say though that it can be a bit temperamental at times. Just trying to work out the length we need. Now I'm going to just do a rough cut along this. I will say to you, use an old knife, don't use anything you think you want to get back again, because this stuff gets tar all over it, and you know, it blunts knives really, really quickly. So I only ever use very, very cheap blades. To be honest, I only use cheap blades anyway, but I would only use cheap blades doing this. To make sure this stays where it should, there's a special type of nail to use. And I use this all the time. You can get them a bit longer than this. These are very, very cheap ones. But the reason they're quite good is because they've got such a big head on them. When the wind blows, it tends not to rip them. If it's really, really strong gales, I've had some rip up. But often, these are perfect. Now I've made sure it fits all the way around. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to get to the lowest point. And tack one in on the corner. Then I'm going to go to the other corner and do the same. And this way I can double check to make sure that I've got all my parts lined up properly. Now before you tack this in fully, you want to make sure that you've taken up all the slack. So now we've got a tight edge along there. Next, go to the front. Now I've left about a centimetre overhanging, and I've done that on the back, the front, and I will do that on the sides, and it just means the water will roll straight off, rather than if you fold it under, it sometimes tries to follow the contours. Again, gather up as much slack as you can. Again, trying to get as much slack as you can. If you are turning it like I am, if you haven't connected it to a solid base yet, be careful you're not ripping the stuff at the back or the sides or wherever, because this stuff is quite easy to rip. Okay, I've done both the back and the front of this, and this is now the underside. And now we've got to fold the sides in. Now there are multiple ways to do this. Some people cut bits off of them. I don't. I fold them as if they're a Christmas present. Fold them down, and then once all the bits are folded down, you can decide whether you're going to cut bits off of them or not. So let me show you a way of hiding the edges. Now if I was to fold this now, I'd be left with a piece sticking up. But what you can do is if you fold it and then you dip it in under, and now when you place it, you've got a perfect seal. While doing this, remember to make sure you're always pulling the slack. Any slack you've got on it, it will make it wobble around in the wind, and it can cause issues. Once you've done this one just with one, you come back down to the bottom corner, and again fold along the edge as if you're going to fold it round, and then turn it in on itself. Now it's really important to pull as tight as you can to make sure again you've got no slack and no like bumpy bits. I do 2 or 3 of these nails in on the longer edges. At this side it doesn't matter because I'll be cutting some of it off, but just to make sure it holds. But now just go all the way down like you did on the other sides to make sure that you've got it as tight and as secure as you possibly can. When you've nailed up both sides, you want to come along and cut this edge smoother. You don't want it too far down. And one thing you can do is grab a straight edge, figure out where you want it to be cut, and then using the straight edge you can bend it over, making yourself sort of an imaginary line. Sometimes it makes it easier, other times it doesn't. There you go, that's straight-ish, and it just gives me something to cut along now. I just quickly put some hinges on, and I've lined them up with the roof, and I've drilled corresponding holes in that. Very simple, you know, and however you build yours it will be different, so I didn't bother showing that. For me, I just lined them up with this part, the bottom of this, because I knew that this hinge was exactly the same width as that. Very simple, but you know, it might be different for you. Next, what I'm going to do is start putting the feather edge boarding around the back, because that will be the easiest. Well, the back and the sides will be the easiest, but I'm going to start on the back. Now, what I would have liked to have done is placed one on the back and then gone to the side and made a corresponding side one, and so on round, so that it all matched up. But that will literally mean me turning this thing hundreds of times, and it is too heavy to do that. So I'm just going to be lifting this up on its side, well, on its front, and I'm going to put the feather board on. Now normally I would just nail the feather edge boarding on, but because this needs to be carried into place and carrying it's going to be a bit of a challenge, I'm going to be screwing each piece in just so that it's solid on there. Nailing it's absolutely fine if you're going to nail it when it's in place, but because you don't want people to be holding it and just pulling pieces off. Now I cut all of my feather edge board for this side already. Now with feather edge, if you have a look, it's that shape. And what you do is you put the fat end at the bottom. Do the same again with your next layer, and you always start from the bottom. And what this does is it allows the water to just drip off and it doesn't get in the gaps. To avoid any of the wood splitting, I'm going to be drilling holes first, and I'm going to do it closer to the bottom of the feather edge board. And I'm just doing one side at a time. I never drill both holes just in case I move it during, and then I want the feather edge board to be dead straight. Again as well, I try and get the screw under the so it's not above the surface of the wood. otherwise you get a collection point on the screw. So with this piece, obviously it comes over the hinges, so what I need to do is I need to get it to where I want it and measure off the hinges. So I'm just going to do a little mark either side of the hinges. So this doesn't have to be dead on, the closer the better, but it doesn't have to be dead on. Not that you can see, but there's marks here, and now I need to go down and mark how far down they go. So they're dead on 3.5 centimetres. So I continue the line over. So they're dead on 3.5 centimetres, the hinge, so I'm just going to continue the line from where it is. Doesn't again have to be exact, but as close as possible the better. And now measure down 3.5. And there's one bit to cut out. Now when cutting these out, very careful cutting down because you can easily split it. Now I've hit it along the edge with the chisel, slowly over time, and it literally should just peel out. So I'm just going to continue to chisel until it gets right through. Okay, there we go. Needs a bit of a clean up on it, but that's as simple as that. Just whack it with a chisel a few times. You can use various saws to do that as well. I just don't have any. There's both the slots cut out. Now fingers crossed, when I place it on here, it should line up exactly. It's very bowed, this piece of wood, isn't it? But yeah, they both do line up perfectly. I'm probably going to have to screw it here as well. Really badly warped. Okay, that's the back done. Okay, we'll have to leave it there now. There will be a part 4 and that'll be out tomorrow. See you then.